Well, hello everyone. This is Maureen Hagan here to present this webinar entitled Healthy Backs for Life. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to sharing with you insights and, most importantly, programs incorporating exercises that will help accomplish a number of things, including helping you yourself lead by example by living life with a healthy back, as well as having the knowledge to help others do the same. Before we get into the objectives of today's webinar, I just would like to share with you quickly my background. I've worked in the fitness industry for over 30 years as a licensed physiotherapist, as well as a certified CanFit Pro, FIS, and PTS instructor and trainer. I've been recognized in the industry with a number of awards. Basically what that says is I've had a lot of experience combining the best of physiotherapy skills, but more importantly, my experience designing group fitness programs and exercises that help attract people into exercise and help retain them, that is, helping them be consistent every single day, doing what they need and what they love, and achieving results along the way. Today's objectives for our session will entitle us to look at 4 key things. Number 1 is to really review and highlight what functional movement is and take a look at what wellness is in terms of an approach to how we help people build healthy backs and help impact their lives in a positive way, not only performance, but to preserve aging along the way. To review the latest research and training approaches so that we have a thorough understanding of how we build programs and why we do what we do. I'm happy to share with you the top 10 do's and don'ts of programming. And these are 10 of each, the positive and the things to look to avoid in my experience and through my review of the research. We'll identify 10 functional exercises that fit in any exercise or training program. So this is ideal both for the fitness instructor, the personal trainer, and also the fitness consumer that's looking just to protect and build their own healthy back. And lastly, we hope that you'll adopt some of these practices and exercises into your own fitness regime, because we lead by example and we need to be the role model to inspire others. So we'll get right underway, and I'd love you to just think about what functional movement means. We'll touch on that definition, and I'd like to define it by the philosophy of beginning with the end in mind. And then we'll talk about how to get primal when we get physical around the exercises that we would incorporate into functional movement. And then I'd love to share with you my KISS principle for keep it simple and succeed, so that we can really, depending on the level we come into the industry or where we're at in our careers, we can pick up some practical tips on how to help people build a better back. So first of all, what is functional movement? And I know that term has been thrown around for many years, and when I started in the industry, it was actually not even recognized. But I'm happy to say that it's here to stay. It's one of the top trending findings right now. People are really keen on functional movement. I define functional movement as training the body to perform as a whole and integrated unit. That means developing the adequate strength that you can perform not only exercises in your fitness program to gain fitness results, whether that's weight loss and strength gain and mobility, flexibility, etc., but to gain the adequate strength required to perform the number 1 sport in our life, and that is living, life itself. I really believe that we need to begin at the core. That is, we need to build a healthy back. We need to understand what movements originate from having a healthy back, and therefore what is that healthy back that's allowing us to move our bodies and perform, not just this cool inversion pose that I recently had the opportunity to play with, but to get primal with the movements that we need in life to perform and to feel youthful our entire life. So I use this term, and I'll refer to it throughout the webinar, as ADLs, Activities of Daily Living. We really want to help people strive to be able to live independently, to perform ADLs without the need of assistance. We also need to help people improve their health, their wellness, which is a global term to represent not only how they perform, but how they feel and how psychologically they perform in life, and that is show up. Of course, age is only a number. It's the attitude. So, of course, that psychology around how you feel. And it's putting that attitude into action with our abilities that really help us to perform at our ultimate or peak state. Of course, I always recommend that we strive to gain the fitness benefits that lower risk for injury and, more importantly, loss of independence, so that we can live that fitter, healthier, and happier life. We need to get primal in our physical movements. What I mean by that is we need to be able to adopt and mimic the primal movements, the squat, the lunge, the hip hinge, or otherwise known as the deadlift. Being able to push our body weight, pull our body weight, or push and pull away from danger or towards pleasure. And lastly, to be able to twist or rotate our body so that we can move as a dynamic unit in the direction that we choose to go. And that is with a healthy gait walking pattern. So those are your primal movements. We need to keep it simple and succeed. So teaching functional movement techniques begin with understanding those primal movements and building exercises that mimic those movements, strengthen those movements, and enhance our ability to perform those movements throughout our life. I truly believe it begins with having a healthy back. What is a healthy back? What is that definition? It's really having a posture that allows us to integrate and move, and to do that with least risk for strain or pain or injury on the spine itself. We need to understand the role the core plays in the primal movements. If we remove our arms and our legs, what remains? Of course, our head, which is our brain that connects the neural pathways to our muscles, but we think of everything remaining from the shoulders to the hips and including both as the core. We need to understand the core is like the corset. It functions to move the trunk in all directions and to move the limbs. We need to know it needs to remain strong throughout our lives to continue to move our bodies the way that we need to move. And I'll be focusing on that as what I refer to as a wellness approach to programming. We need to take it from that core focus and build from there. So you can best imagine that the 10 exercises we're going to focus on in this particular webinar will be core infused, will be focused on functional exercises that act upon or work from the core and extend outward from there. We need to, in our wellness approach, and that plus sign in the right corner is the international icon for wellness, integration, progression. We need to find that balance or that approach to integrating both movement or physical activity with rest and recovery. And we also need to think about finding that approach between physical activity, rest and recovery with healthy eating and sleep. Because to me, rest and recovery doesn't always mean just when you're sleeping. Engaging in the right formula of exercise, that is frequency, intensity, time, and type, is really important for enhancing longevity and sustaining ability to perform the way that we desire to. What I'd love to say about that is I like acronyms to represent recipes or prescriptions, and there is more than one road to Oz. So what I'll share with you today is just one of many principles, and I'll deviate from just slightly those traditional fit formulas based on the experience I've had working with people not only as they're moving through their journey of life, that's my eloquent way of saying working with the act of aging, as well as helping people build healthier backs along the way. First, we need to respect healthy body composition, and that's the biggest challenge we're facing. The reality is, and this is cited in the research, that if we help people lose weight, lose the unwanted 10 to 30 pounds that classify people as overweight or obese, we will reduce the majority of back issues that exist in society today. So you will see part of my FIT formula is healthy aerobic activity to manage weight. We also need to build healthy muscle because we know muscle burns more calories even at rest and will help people achieve that healthy body composition. But please note a wellness approach would also include healthy eating and managing stress. We need to be proactive also with workspace ergonomics and habits. You know, as I speak with you today, I'm sitting at my desk. I'd love to say that I stand throughout the day, but even in my workspace, I'm forced to sit. I like to say, let's really, think of our chair as a friend. So use your chair to help you sit tall and help you align the spine rather than using it as that negative tool that causes us to slouch and be lazy or to be sedentary. So look at your desk and look at the habits at work. Make sure that you break those up. Use something like a timer to keep you moving throughout the day, getting up and down. So please look into the workspace ergonomic tips and strategies and habits to help your clients. A wellness approach is just not the 30 minutes you spend encouraging people to exercise with you or on their own, but the habits they have throughout the day that help them build and maintain healthy backs. Healthy eating, of course, is a key to building a healthy body composition and building the wellness approach towards self-respect. And believe it or not, if you are positive about your approach in life, your incidence of back pain will be reduced. That is not just my thoughts on that. It's proven in the research around the wellness approach to posture, that improving posture alone will improve self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-confidence, etc. Healthy sleep habits we've spoken to briefly, and consistency and quality as well as quantity make up those three parts. So you can see that you need exercise, you need the fit components of exercise, but there are other aspects that help build a healthy back. Let's move into my favorite part of back education and programming, and that is the approach to posture. Posture, what is it? And I'd like to take a mind-body emotional approach to this because the latest science is showing us that three parts of posture do contribute to the whole. Posture can be defined in many different ways. We can look at it anatomically as the correct alignment of each of the bones that make up the vertebrae, the way the cervical spine and head sit on the cervical spine, and the alignment of that curve relative to the thoracic curve, and again to the lumbar curve, and how that entire vertebral column sits on the sacrum or our pelvis. But I like to approach posture as more than just the anatomical alignment. And it is more than just sitting and standing. It is a dynamic entity that includes all movements, walking, running, getting dressed, performing your primal movements throughout your day. It's reducing the strain on the spine with the least amount of impact on the cushions between those vertebral bones. They're called discs. The most effective way to use energy is with postural alignment. The concept out of the latest research talks about power posing, and I found this quite humorous but makes total sense to me, so I wanted to share it with you. The research suggests that to build posture from both a physical, a mindful, and emotional level, we need to think about how we pose or how we stand and its effects on building confidence, effects on everything from how we fire up the core muscles to brace, especially the lumbar region, to lift the chest to keep an upright posture and to reduce stress on the thoracic and cervical spine. And when we do that, when we fire the corset around the lumbar region, those inner unit core muscles, and when we lift the chest to align the thoracic and cervical spine, our head sits upright and reduces load throughout the spine. You can imagine how that makes you feel happier, lighter, lifted, fitter, younger. The research also shows that many of the benefits of powering up your posture through posing in upright and in elongated or neutral alignment positions throughout all the moves, especially the primal movements, will help you maintain that feeling and that sense of strength, again, physically, power, mentally, and emotionally. So thinking about that, and of course you can cite the research, it is there. There's over 26 research papers that examine the diverse and dynamic relationship between how we stand, how we feel, the actions of how we move, and the language we use, not only our outside language, but our inside thoughts. It all makes up what posture is. Interesting. Defining posture, well, this slide does give you a pictorial of what perfect or ideal alignment is. And you'll see that plumb line on the far left visual as compared to the three postures in front of it, which depict both the rounded kyphotic posture and the lordotic posture in B, with the flat back in C, and with the sway back in D. You'll see all those postures or personalities out there, and they are mechanical modifications in the ideal posture. I truly believe that ideal posture is built from building a healthy core musculature, helping those muscles act directly on the spine to align the spine and hold it, working at low frequencies of contraction throughout the day so that those inner unit muscles can simply hold us in an ideal position, so that when we deviate from that ideal posture, we can return to it without having to think about it. However, as we develop sedentary lifestyles, poor postural awareness, and aging itself will cause a decline in posture, we need to bring our mindset back to building that healthier posture and back. And the exercises that I've provided for you today will help you achieve that. But I do recommend that you assess posture. There are many ways to assess it. You can take a visual look from all planes of movement. You can use online tools and grids with your camera, taking photos of your clients to get a baseline of where they're at. You can also assess posture dynamically by taking a look at how the client moves, performing those primal movements that I announced at the beginning, the squat, the lunge, also the push-up, the plank, and when you hinge forward, all show you dynamically if someone is able to maintain postural alignment or neutral spine. Lastly, I'd like to describe posture as that the body is a kinetic chain, like an orchestra in which each part is tuned up so that the orchestra, that is your sling muscles, the muscles that act directly on the spine, can perform harmoniously to move the body in the direction that you choose. We need to fine-tune our training approach a little bit, and one of the biggest takeaways from this webinar that I'd like to share with you is the concept of abdominal bracing over hollowing. Often we thought we needed to suck in our abdominals like pulling up our skinny jeans, and that was an ideal way of recruiting our abs. We found that that is actually a dysfunctional approach or an incorrect approach to turning on the abdominal brace or the inner unit core muscles that act directly on the spine. Transverse abdominis being one of them. Of course, there's pelvic floor, diaphragm, and multifidus, just to name a few others. I'd encourage you to look at your anatomy and review it. It's important. But this is really about drawing the abdominals in as if gently pulling the navel towards the spine. I'm demonstrating it here, sitting both in a chair, standing, and the best way to find it is lying supine with your fingertips slid under the natural inward curve of the lower back, and then drawing the abdominal towards the spine and drawing the spine towards the back of the chair or that natural landmark behind or the floor if you're lying. Now, remember, we spend most of our days sitting and standing, so it's important to help people find that abdominal brace in those positions. I like to teach that through analogy of the dimmer switch, thinking about turning the light on using a dimmer switch versus a light switch. It's not all or nothing. It's turning the light on at a level 3 or 4 just to have that dim contraction or that low-grade contraction. I like to say, so the inner unit muscles are just buzzing at about 30 to 40% of their total contraction to allow you to feel that corset or moderate tightening effect to allow you then to perform movements maintaining neutral spine. We know that if we can align the lumbar spine, we can keep the rest of the spine in a better position. My cues for setting up a good abdominal brace would be draw your navel in towards your spine as if someone's giving you a tickle around the middle, or as if someone's giving you a hug, or just visualizing your navel kissing your spine. You should be able to breathe comfortably, expanding the belly, sides of the belly, and into the back body. Here's my 4-step quick postural checkup for you as we perform the abdominal brace. Think about setting your feet, whether that's lying, standing, or sitting, so they're hip width apart or slightly wider for women. Then you give your glutes a bit of a squeeze. That's an isometric glute squeeze to press the hips forward to bring them in alignment under the shoulders and above the ankle bones. Lift the chest to let the shoulders set down and behind. That will not only allow your shoulders to fall back and down without having to use effort, but it'll help you draw the chin back to bring the head back into neutral position. That's a perfect 4-step postural checkup. So take note of that. I'd like you to use that because you can assess so much by just looking at those 4 specific things. Feet stance, position of the pelvis, chest level so that it's lifted but ribs aren't popping, so shoulders are setting directly under the ears and the chin retracted. As we move on, let's look at the 10 do's and don'ts. I found 5, maybe more of each. So here we go, and I love starting with the positive because these are the things we want to focus on. Yes, daily exercise. The work of Dr. Stuart McGill here in Canada at the University of Waterloo, along with other experts in the field of healthy back conditioning and rehabilitation, advocate for low doses of daily exercise versus high intense doses of exercise once a week or even fewer. So daily exercise, and we'll talk specifically about that dosage, but I'm going to recommend as little minutes repeated 3 times a day. Less is more when it comes to building healthy back because technique must come first. Aerobic exercise such as walking, treadmill walking, or even better than walking on a flat surface, walking on a slight incline to help to balance and build the muscles around the hips. So we're not just using muscles in the front body, but the hamstrings, the glutes, and the back. So aerobic exercise on slight incline using treadmill, elliptical, a stepper. But walking is a great activity because we can all do it. It's portable and inexpensive. Resistance training exercises for the back that build total body wellness and resilience. So we'll look at what those are momentarily. Stretching daily and self-care, finding the ways to build a healthy back through stretching. And I love the fact that yoga is so popular because being that it trends very high on the top fitness trends, people want to be involved, so therefore they're participating. But remind them to stretch. They think, maybe tomorrow. But when they get into yoga, believe it, you're stretching while you benefit from the strengthening. We've talked about bracing versus hollowing. That's so very, very important. So please focus on that technique and practice it so you can teach it. A little hint for your bracing versus hollowing, if you are doing that with your clients and yourself and learning, place a small air-filled balloon base if it's not your fingertips. Fill it up to build the balloon to the size of an oversized egg. You'll have a nice, dynamic, pliable surface to imprint your spine onto when you're drawing your abdominals in. You can use that balloon Or a rolled up towel, you can do that in sitting as well. So adopt it for the car, your chair at work, etc. It's a fantastic way to get feedback throughout the day and to know that you are maintaining that abdominal brace. And as I mentioned earlier in helping to define posture is think about power posing. That is, think about your posture throughout the day. Here's a quick tip for doing something to remind you. Place smiley face symbol on a post-it note and place it around your house on a mirror or on your computer terminal, your steering wheel, your rear view mirror, your hallway mirror, anywhere where you'll pass during the day or throughout the day where you find yourself slouching. That smile will put a smile on your face to remind you to power pose. Your don'ts. There's a nice big list here. First of all, I'm going to start at the bottom. We're not prescribing rehabilitation here. We're actually thinking about prehabilitation. That is the exercises that build a healthy back to avoid back pain, injury, or disability. Or we're meeting the therapist post-rehab. I say that a little bit metaphorically. That means we pick up where the therapist left off. When I worked with clients in the clinical setting, they thanked me for helping them get rid of their back pain. And they said, great, now I can go live my life and I don't have to do anything else, right? I said, well, you do need to continue to exercise. They looked at me shockingly thinking that their therapy was now over. I said, it's just beginning. Exercise is a very important role pre and post. Please work with a health professional and refer your clients to a health professional anytime throughout your training with that client if they have an acute or chronic back issue. We do not diagnose or prescribe. We don't eliminate exercise altogether, so please be proactive if your client says, I need to rest and not exercise because of my back condition. Reach out and ask for more information. Eliminating exercise altogether will actually set us up for issues down the road. Never compromise or don't compromise technique for reps and sets. What I mean by that is it's not about just checking the box for how many reps you do and building to complete the set. It's not about that at all. It's about focusing on total time under tension. I'd rather see, as would the experts advise, people perform one set or one plank held 15 seconds with postural perfection than to do a plank for 30 seconds to a minute just to brag they can. Perform range of motion exercises within the first hour of awakening. Please avoid flexion within the first hour of awakening with your client. So this is a message for those who teach classes or train clients in the first hour in the morning. Ask them, when did they get up? Ask them how long they've been up. Move your exercise plan around so they're doing their flex-based exercise towards the end of the workout. That is totally fine because you will have been with them for longer than an hour by that point. Avoiding flexion will preserve the health of the discs alone within the first hour, and that is something that we have to be very mindful of. So that's a big point. Exercise into pain, we would never do that, so please continue to ask your clients curious questions to see and be observant of facial expressions and look at adjustments in alignment. If you see people deviate from good alignment, it's probably because they have stiffness or pain. Investigate that. And to emphasize my point about avoiding flexion, do not do traditional curl-ups that encourage flattening of the lumbar spine as your method of training the core. If they have a known back issue, there are plenty of abdominal exercises you can choose without flexing the trunk, and the research supports that as a preferred method of training, especially if you're training the client within their first hour in the morning. Of course, we'd never impose high loads to get strong. Lower and slower and less is more. I hope that's helpful to chunk that up into what to do and what not to do. We don't have time for questions, but we will move right along to give you the exercises. And please note that you'll have plenty of opportunities to refer to the documentation to support this webinar. My top 10 functional exercises, they are listed for you. And these are my favorite. Doesn't mean you have to do them every time. Rule of thumb. Choose one of the exercises in each of the positions of the body, at least in your exercise routines. So when I teach my Awesome Abs and Better Backs class, I would choose one exercise from 4-point kneeling. I'd choose at least one exercise from upright or standing. I'd choose at least one, if not two, from side lying or forward lying or supine lying. And depending on the goals of the class, I continue to mix that up so that you always have a different flavor and different focus each time. So these are the top 10, and we'll work through them. And keep in mind that if you're new to these exercises, then I'd encourage you to start putting them into your program so you can familiarize yourself and see the benefit and experience the benefit for yourself. Here's my number one tip for learning how to build your repertoire of back conditioning exercises is to train or go see a health professional, have your posture assessed, and ask for a back conditioning program for yourself. Swap your services if you're a personal trainer and work together. There's many ways you can build your repertoire, but the best way is to be a student of learning. Number 1, spinal balance. This one is taken right out of the books from rehabilitation experts. We've been using this for many years, and it is at the foundation of all training. What I mean by that is this is one of those that you should build into every core or better backs or total body conditioning class or training session. So listen up to that one because there's lots of variations to this one, lots of ways you can incorporate equipment. I love working on the BOSU, the balance ball. I love working on a bench. I love even using a chair to do it in an upright position if I have difficulty with some of my clients or participants getting to the floor. But this is what helps minimize the load and compression on the spine, ensures stable patterns of muscle activity, especially from the core when it comes to activating the scapular area and the hip area or moving the arms and the legs. So spinal balance. You can use resistance tubing. There's many variations to add further resistance for the arm and leg lift and pushing the arm and leg out to diagonal to change planes and muscle recruitment patterns. Next one is hip hinge. Once upon a time, this was called a contraindicated exercise. We shouldn't lean forward without support of a surface. I'm thinking to myself, how is that the case when in life we must be able to lean and lift, to pick up, put up, and at the very least enjoy leisure activities such as leaning over to put up, digging in the garden, lifting our gym bag, our grandchild, etc., or performing variations of the basics in our exercise programs. The hip hinge is our deadlift. I'm showing it both supported, which helps people get the feeling of, transferring weight forward, keeping a long spine. The key here is foot stance. Hip width, knees moving slightly forward, hips moving back, so that we have a chance to hinge forward, keeping a long spine, keeping the chest lifted and the chin aligned with the sternum, allowing the weight of the arms to move towards the ground. Adding resistance eventually makes this a weight training exercise. Changing the variation to add one leg by standing on one and leaning back, sliding back, and lifting the other. Counterbalancing, of course, the very functional movement of picking things up. Number 3, lunging to step up. The classic 90-90 lunge is a fantastic all-body conditioning move that helps you see what your clients and participants are capable of doing to align and maintain a healthy back while lowering the weight towards the floor. You progress that with step-ups. Why? Because standing on one leg or lifting to one leg is a progression exercise to help build hip stability, to fire the standing glute muscle on the standing leg, especially glute medius, the muscle that helps us to maintain hip stability while standing or walking. This is a very important exercise. There are many variations to this exercise, but this is a good place to start. Adding external load is the next and easiest progression. Don't compromise anything before setting up the perfect lunge. I use my arms crossed to help keep my chest lifted and shoulders back and down. Just a thought. Number 4, squat and squat variations. Let's start on the far right at the top. Put a ball between your thighs. That's especially important for women who have issues with knee tracking and collapsing chest forward or rounding the back or letting the lordotic curve sway in order to get into the squat. The first is the stance, feet hip width apart or wider for women. You must bend the ankle, so keep that in mind if you're training women who wear high heels throughout the day. Lack of Achilles or calf flexibility will hinder a perfect squat. The knees must move forward, but as long as the weight is in the heel, then you are in perfect alignment. You cannot shift the hips back if you cannot counterbalance with knees moving forward. Squeezing a ball will help you recruit the inner unit muscles, the core, starting with the pelvic floor. Keeping the chest lifted, I love to lift my hands forward to counterbalance. Lifting them up by the ears, maintaining a long straight spine is actually a squat test to show you as the trainer where your client is going to be tight or inflexible, where they're going to be weak, or where they're going to be dysfunctional in their movement pattern. You can see that the alignment of the spine must be maintained by having that abdominal brace, shoulders set, and of course, we recruit the glutes to stand, and we can add a single leg option, which I recommend highly to maintain the strength required in the pelvis. So any squat you do, vary it to single leg work. Number 5 is the hip hike, and this one is really a great exercise. I have many single leg hip standing stability exercises. This one is the simplest and the most effective for starting out. It's demonstrated as standing on one leg with the knee slightly bent, difficult to see in this photo, but the standing knee is slightly bent. You lift the left knee to hip level to start, the left picture. You need to have a level pelvis, so that means abs braced, chest lifted, chin retracted. And then you lift the sits bone or the cheek up sideways or laterally. It's called a hip lift to the side. Notice we don't lift the leg or internally rotate the thigh. It's a bit cheeky, but we lift the hip up as if we're picking something up from under our seat. Less is more here, and the cue is side of the hip to the side of the ribs. You'll feel the obliques fire on the lifted side. You'll feel your glutes fire, especially glute medius, on the standing side. To make this exercise more challenging, stand with a straighter leg or a more bent knee. Of course, you can add resistance. Put a stability ball between your lifted thigh and the wall, and while you're hip hiking, push the thigh into the wall, into the ball, towards the wall to create more isometric recruitment of the muscles. Fantastic exercise, and I have to say it's probably the purest prehab exercise you will find today. Number 6, we all know the hip bridge, but I always like to say hip, hip, hooray. We need to do it single-legged. Is that a word? Legged? Single leg at a time, because we have imbalances side to side, which cause a lot of our low back issues today. So do the hip bridge in a single leg fashion. I like to start with a bent knee. Why? Because it gives me that impression and imagery from visual. That is, I can see my foot. I then cue to press hips up, foot up, and that feeling of pressing up will help you drive from the ground, both from the shoulders and the standing heel. I watch people in class, they have incredible difficulty lifting the hip up high enough to fire the glutes into a hip extended position to achieve neutral spine. You can cue hips lift by squeezing the butt, by driving the foot into the ground. You would want to cue navel to spine so you can minimize extension throughout the lumbar spine. And a good cue is chest towards chin. And that gives you that feeling of extension throughout the back and allows you to post up on the shoulders. And that will give you a beautiful extension through the posterior sling muscles. I love this exercise, and it is humbling. Do this. Start on the weak side, if you know which side that is. Then perform it on the strong side, and then go back to the weak side. So think about that in your rep sets. Use external resistance, a plate across the trunk. You may want to bend the knee and turn it out to the side in a figure 4 fashion. You may want to use resistance tubing that you'll place across the hips, pushing down under your palms. or simply just use the weight of your body. It's a great exercise. In this case, repetition is your friend to build strength and endurance. Number 7, this is the side bridge. And this one, if I had to choose over a prone bridge, I would choose. Why? Because it mimics falling or fall prevention. It mimics supporting your body through your forearm, through your scapular region, your shoulder, and helps to build the core from the shoulder down to the hip and below. You'll see in the picture, and we start the picture above, and that is the alignment of the bottom knee through to the shoulder. You're pressing the hips forward to keep the hips stacked. I like to use my hand on top to keep that top hip pressed forward or rotated forward so my pelvis is level in that plane. Abs are recruited. I'm pressing into my forearm to push my shoulder down. Chin is aligned with the sternum. You may need to take the top hand to cradle the head to support the neck. That's fine. The action is actually hiking the bottom hip up to get a level hip with top shoulder. And you'll see there's more space below. You can vary that by scissoring the bottom leg behind the front foot to create greater challenge. This one's about holding posture and position for 15 seconds at the most when you're beginning, but building up to 30 to 1 minute and beyond. Of course, working both sides, and you'll find one naturally weaker than the other, so use that weak, strong, weak rep set recipe. Dead bug is a very important exercise that mimics the reciprocal action of your gait, but we need to actually build core stability both from the shoulder region right through to the pelvis. So this one is an important and very effective exercise. Starting at the left, where you'd start in what's known as a dead bug position or a reverse all fours position. Knees bent, stacked over the hips, arms extended directly above the shoulder. Chin is retracted, abs are drawn in, low back is in neutral. That means a slight small space or lumbar curve respected. A little balloon here or rolled up hand towel is a perfect tool to help people be aware, especially as they extend one leg to 45 degrees with the same leg extending overhead. You can switch the arms around, take the arm down with the lowering thigh, and that will switch the brain and the pattern we call brain gym. You can bend the lowering leg to drop the heel or toe towards the floor if you're just starting out. The dead bug is a very important exercise, and you'll see right away where people have weakness in their entire posterior or anterior muscle slings. Plus, it'll test the ability to hold what we call that abdominal brace. Push-ups and planks. I love the push-up. Work from the floor because it teaches people alignment. On the floor, which isn't seen, you can draw the chin in, you can draw the abdominals in, and you can press the hips towards the ground. That helps you to align the spine. And then the push-up halfway to the plank position. Great to hit that perfect alignment from the earlobe through to the back of the patella. Or if you lift your knees, a perfect slope. There's neutral spine working into a pushing action. The best part of a push-up is the plank at the top, and of course the eccentric movement towards returning to starting position. We need to be able to push our body weight, men and women alike. This is the best exercise, bar none. Of course, there's many variations to a push-up, but you can take this one anywhere and you don't need equipment. Last but not least, we do need to integrate torso rotation into our movements. I'm demonstrating this variation of a wood chop to demonstrate that when we rotate through the thoracic spine, the hips maintain stability and the torso rotates. When we look at our anatomy of the spinal column, rotation happens at the thoracic spine, not the lumbar spine. Very often you'll see the hips rotating or twisting, but we need to keep them still. The best way to teach that is weight transference from a side lunge to the alternate side lunge. Picking up from below and putting up to the top, or throwing actions such as the wood chop, or in this case the reverse wood chop. You can use resistance tubing, med balls, kettlebells, etc. You can vary this working seated in a chair, but we need to use this. Why? Well, in my experience, I've seen most people achieve great and healthier backs in the gym. But when they hurt themselves, they typically say, I was bending forward and twisting to hit the back shot in the corner on the squash court, tennis court, or twisting to pull or reach for the dog leash, or racing after this or that. It's usually in a twisted, rotating position that we end up putting ourselves at risk. So we need to mimic that movement and incorporate torso rotation into any Healthy Backs program. Closing off the session, those are your 10 exercises. I'd like to finish up, if I can, with just a few references. I love the work of Stuart McGill. I've referenced both his books here. Please review your anatomy. Undergo some muscle testing yourself of the basic core exercises to see where you're at with your core strength, because a healthy back begins with a healthy core. I've incorporated just one recommendation for finding a postural analysis assessment form. And of course, I've written to the subject of posture and healthy backs many times in my physiology volumes. You can always reference those through CanFit Pro. We are just closing off here, and I'd just like to move to my last slide. I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for your time. I hope that you found it useful. I want to just let you know that there will be a lovely quiz for you to take at the end to help you test your knowledge, to give you the opportunity of earning a CEC with CanFit Pro for your FIS and PTS. So we like to stay certified. So there you go, one CEC by completing the quiz. And you can go to canfitprointeractive.com to look at that, and there will be a $30 charge to reap the benefits of this education and to gain your continuing education credit. Thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in a workshop or a CanFit Pro event very soon.